Madam President, yesterday marked the deadline for filing personal income taxes in America. I'm sure many people spent the past weekend surrounded by 1099 forms, shoeboxes full of receipts, hoping to claim a well-deserved tax refund after a year of financial stress due to the pandemic. It's another reason why the American Rescue Plan that Congress passed earlier this year was such a major accomplishment. That plan included the largest single-year tax cut for middle and low-income earners in the history of the nation. Let me repeat that. This year's American Rescue Plan included the largest single-year tax cut for middle and low-income earners in America's history. But for a privileged few, those tax cuts are pennies compared to the deductions that they enjoy every year because of Republican tax proposals. Proposals like the Trump tax plan that Republicans signed into law in 2017, just 4 years ago. Over the next few years, it's estimated that more than 80% of the benefits from this Trump tax plan will go exclusively to the top 1% of American earners, the top 1%. It's nothing more than welfare for the wealthiest. Perhaps the most egregious aspect of the Trump tax plan is the billions of taxpayers' dollars it will give to the world's wealthiest individuals and corporations over the next decade. We're already feeling the devastating impact this corporate giveaway has had on America's economy. Listen to this now, if you just turned in your taxes. Last year, 55 of the largest companies in America paid $0 in federal taxes, despite making more than $40 billion in profits. $40 billion in profits, zero taxes. It's a glaring example of the imbalance in our tax system. I don't think there's any rational explanation for having school teachers and janitors pay more in taxes than the largest corporation. But it seems the folks on the other side of the aisle disagree. When Senator McConnell met with President Biden last week, he said that raising taxes on corporations, the same corporations that paid $0 last year in taxes, is, quote, a red line when it comes to funding the president's infrastructure package. That means Senator McConnell, the Republican leader in the Senate, would rather cut taxes for the ultra-wealthy than repair America's crumbling roads and bridges. Did you see that picture in the news about the bridge? I think it was in Tennessee, on one of the interstates. Cracked so badly they had to close an interstate bridge. We remember just a few years ago in Minnesota, an interstate highway collapsed, taking American lives. It can happen, and will continue to happen unless we do our part. That's not just bad policy, it's dangerous. I guess this is a picture that they brought to show what was happening with this bridge in Tennessee. You can see the crack in the steel girders there, and the reason that they closed the bridge. God forbid some other bridge is in that same shape and we haven't discovered it, or we won't discover it soon enough. We need to put some money in our infrastructure. We count on it every day. People rely on the safety of these bridges and other facilities, and it's our job to make sure that they're kept up. That's not just bad policy, saying no tax increases for corporations if it means paying for infrastructure that way. It's dangerous. Take a look at what happens when we fail to adequately invest in our infrastructure. That photo tells it all. Structural crack, they called it. That was found in the Hernando de Soto Bridge in Memphis, Tennessee last week. Tens of thousands of vehicles drive over that bridge every day. It connects commuters and commercial traffic between Arkansas and Tennessee. If not for a scrupulous engineer who caught the crack, local authorities said it would have led to a catastrophic result. Luckily, the catastrophe was averted. But now the people of Memphis and across America have a different problem. Repairs take time. That means the economic damage caused by the bridge's closure is going to last for months. And it means that shipping and transportation networks will have to reroute for the foreseeable future. So it has a national impact on the economy. One bridge. Is this what we've come to in terms of infrastructure in America? Are we supposed to accept bridges hanging by a thread? This closure happened the same week that cyber criminals shut down one of the largest petroleum pipelines in the United States. Did you see the newscast? Did you see the lines of people and their panic buying? They didn't know if there'd be enough gas to get to work, get the kids to school in emergencies. And so they went and filled their tanks, and we had a real mess on our hands. We saw the chaos that was created by that ransomware attack. Cars lining up in every direction, people actually filling in, this is dangerous, plastic bags with gasoline. And while it may have been a bridge in Memphis or a pipeline on the East Coast last week, what's next? According to the American Society of Civil Engineers, 43% of our public roadways are in poor and mediocre condition. Now, maybe that just means potholes and banging up your car or slowing down the traffic, but it could be worse. All of these signs point to the same conclusion. We're living on borrowed funds from a previous generation. We're using the infrastructure that they paid for because we don't want to create our own infrastructure. Cutting corners is simply not an option. That's exactly where we're going to end up if Senator McConnell's red line becomes the standard for deciding if we have infrastructure. And it's predicated on a failed economic theory. The Republican approach, the so-called aptly named Laffer curve, believes that if you just cut taxes on the wealthiest people, that'll take care of the whole economy. Everybody's going to get well if the wealthiest have more money. I don't buy it. It's time to wake up from the trickle-down fevered dream. Look at where 50 years of cutting taxes on the extra wealthy brought us. Bridges on the verge of collapse, pipelines held for ransom, the most unequal economy since the Gilded Age in American history. The economic consensus is clear. Tax cuts on the wealthy have never created jobs. They've never boosted economic growth. They just boost the bank accounts of the people who already have it. The benefits rise all the way to the top of the economic ladder and stay there. If we want to rebuild America, we need to invest in America. To do that, we need the wealthiest Americans and massive corporations to step up and pay their fair share. If you think you paid your fair share or more yesterday, how about the corporations who paid zero on $40 billion in profit? President Biden understands this. That's why he's proposed the American Jobs Plan. It's going to grow our economy by putting millions of people to work, rebuilding roads and bridges like the Hernando de Soto Bridge. And it would make our crucial infrastructure more resilient to 21st century threats like ransomware and cyber criminals. President Biden also has a plan to pay for these investments, unlike the Trump tax plan. To start, the president's plan would raise hundreds of billions of dollars by holding tax cheats accountable and rolls back the tax breaks that encourage corporations to ship jobs overseas. This is something that boils my blood. Here is a corporation, and many of them have been located in my state, doing well, making a handsome profit, expanding their business. They sit down with their accountants and lawyers and come up with a brand new idea. Well, let's just move our headquarters out of the United States, out of the state of Illinois, and put it in some foreign country. Think of how much we'll save by not paying our fair share of taxes in the United States. We get all the benefits of this country. We use its infrastructure. We locate here. We actually live here. But we take a post office box in some faraway place and skip paying taxes to America. What a grand idea that is for some. For me, it's just deception and fraud. The only people who would see their taxes increase under President Biden's proposals are those making over $400,000 a year. Now, if you're making over that amount of money and don't want to announce it publicly, but you're sick and tired of Durbin's speech, get up and leave at this point. But if you're under $400,000 a year, stick around, because President Biden has made sure these tax increases will not affect you. Let me put it another way. We can fund President Biden's infrastructure plan without raising a single tax on actual working families in America. How about that? Frankly, it's about time we balance the scales of our tax system. During the pandemic, how did the richest 1% of Americans do? What was their struggle during this crisis? They saw, the 1%, saw their net worth increase by $4 trillion. Not a bad year. If we want to get serious about creating jobs in America, everybody has to do their part. And this just isn't about rebuilding our country. It's the next century of global leadership at stake. This week, the Senate will consider the Endless Frontiers Act, a bipartisan measure introduced by Senator Schumer, a Democrat, Senator Young, a Republican. It's primarily focused on investing in America's leadership in scientific and technological innovation and making sure those investments create jobs, good-paying jobs in manufacturing and emerging industries. I'm sure there are some worthwhile amendments that should be voted on, but I think it's an excellent example of the legislative process at work. With the Endless Frontiers Act, Republicans and Democrats are coming together to recognize that we need to invest in our capacity to compete with China and the rest of the world. This is one of our highest priorities. And while this bill is a promising starting point, remember, it's just a starting point. I hope it's the beginning of a new bipartisan agenda for the future. We can't afford to stand still. And while we might not agree on every solution, I'm sure we share the same goal: put America on a track to win in the 21st century. I've listened carefully to many of my Republicans who say President Biden is too ambitious, wants to invest too much money, has too many big ideas. These Republicans have a solid second-place strategy for America. I don't want to be part of that. This country can prosper and lead with the right inspiration. President Biden is bringing that to the table. That's what the American Jobs Plan is all about, and with it, President Biden is calling on everybody to play a part in building that future. Let's invest in America and create millions of good-paying jobs in the process. I yield the floor and suggest the absence of quorum.